Hey everyone. This video is a continuation of three previous videos. The first one being on the Zen concept, no birth, no death. The second one expanding on that through a scientific lens. The third one expanding further from a Hindu perspective and using the power of story to help us understand philosophical concepts. Now, this one is going to be a little bit more challenging and tricky, maybe for some of us, because I'm going to look at the idea, the Zen concept of no birth, no death through a Christian lens, namely by looking at a different story, maybe one that some of you are familiar with in the Gospels. And I'm looking particularly at the Gospel of John, chapter 4. And this particular chapter has to do with the Samaritan woman and Jesus sitting at the well. So let me give you a little bit of pre-text before we get into the text. I'll give you my sense of this. If you come from a Christian background like I do, I was born and raised in the Catholic tradition. You might have ideas of Jesus that where you see Jesus as God, where you see this very clear separation between heaven and earth, heaven as a kind of a paradise that you go to after you die. These kinds of ideas will be may get in the way in understanding the 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 gospel that I'm about to read. So I'm going to suggest that we let go of preconceptions about Jesus and the gospels, and try to look at this from a Zen perspective through the lens of no birth, no death, because I think if we understand from an experiential level the idea of no birth and death, the philosophical idea of no death, and then we look at the gospel through that particular lens, we're going to get somewhere. And this story could actually be quite powerful for us. So here's the story. And I may pause here and there to give a little comment. This is about the Samaritan woman. Jesus had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Near the plot of land that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. So that is a reference back to the Hebrew Bible and in the story of Genesis, where Jacob gives a well of water to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So there's some history already there. Right? For Jesus, he's passing through this particular land, and it's said whether this happened historically or not, I'm not really concerned. But there's a narrative here that I'm more interested in. Whether the narrative has historical accuracy or not doesn't bother me. I don't really care. So what I'm looking at is that there is some history in the narrative, not history in the sense of this happened at this time and that happened at that time in real life, but history in the sense of Jesus is passing through something that was there before from one of his forefathers, right? Because remember, Jesus was Jewish. Jacob is the grandson of Abraham, the kind of the central patriarch in Judaism, as well as in Christianity and Islam. So there he is. He's passing through a particular city or land in Samaria, and he's passing through this plot of land where there is a well, and the well has some history for Jesus. Jacob's well was there. Back to the text. Jacob's well was there. Jesus, tired from his journey, sat down there at the well. It was about noon. So he's at a family well. This is a well that he could claim as Jewish to a certain degree from a conventional sense. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." Now, this is a particularly interesting statement because it was considered forbidden for women to uh, serve men in this particular context. His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. So Jesus was all alone. He's with this other woman. That's a big no-no. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How can you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink?" So she wants to say, hey, there's something wrong about this relationship here. For Jews use nothing in common with Samaritans. And there's also a little tension there between the Jews and the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, and here's the point, here's the statement that I think is related to this idea of no birth, no death. He says, "If you knew the gift of God and who is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you do not even have a bucket and the cistern is deep. Where then can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this cistern and drank from it himself with his children and his flocks?" Right? Jesus answered and said to her, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I shall give will never thirst. The water I shall give will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." There it is. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may not be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." So she's taking him very, very literally. And as are we oftentimes when we read this particular passage. But I want to invite you to think about this statement that Jesus makes. He says, "Everyone who drinks of this water from this particular well," and you could substitute this well with the water that comes out of your tap. I don't think Jesus is saying, stop drinking water because I'm going to give you water that's going to make you live forever. I don't think he's saying that. You're still going to have to drink water. The question is the mind that drinks that water. Do we see ourselves as eternal when we drink water? Or do we see ourselves as infinite or as finite? Right? How do we see ourselves? How do we see our life? If we come at this statement from Jesus from a place of no birth, no death, and then read the story, we could say Jesus is saying the same thing as the Zen masters here. He's saying, the water I shall give will become in him a spring, or her, a spring of water welling up to eternal life. I think this is what the Bhagavad Gita is saying. This is what science is saying. This is what Zen Buddhism is saying. That depending on how we see, we can perceive eternal life. And Jesus in this story, he's just uncovering a truth that's already present. He's not saying, to me, he's not saying, follow Jesus and you'll be saved. That's not the meaning of this. You might think, maybe other people might think that. I don't think of it like that. I think that's kind of a rough reading of it, actually. If we think, oh, I got to follow Jesus and then, so the eternal life is already present in us. We just are not seeing it. Our vision is obscured. But if we come at this from a place of no birth, no death, and then read the text, right? Whoever drinks of this water will have eternal life. That says Fusho Fumetsu. What is the water that we drink of? It's called the Dharma in Buddhism. The living water is the Dharma, or the teachings of the Buddha, or we could say the teachings of Jesus. Jesus is pointing out that there is something more than the world of our senses. There's something more than what we can perceive through our senses. He's reminding us of that truth. Are we able to perceive it? We don't have to have some special formula. However, if it helps you to take refuge in Jesus in order to see that, then do it. Right? You don't have to deny taking refuge in Jesus. You don't have to. But if that's not your boat, well, you can take refuge in the Dharma. You can take refuge in the Buddha. You can take refuge in Lord Krishna if that helps you to see this truth, right? Or in Zen terms, you have trust in the profoundness of your own mind. In any of those cases, there is trust in something larger than ourself that is necessary, I think. It can be helpful to read stories about this. It could be helpful to take refuge in someone or something that's wiser than us, to let them see through our eyes for a moment. And then we will perceive these living waters that lead us to eternity, or that help us to perceive eternity right here and right now. So this is Fusho Fumetsu. Feel free to comment, to share your own insights and wisdom in the comments below. And I hope we can have a wonderful discussion about this. Thank you.